Hello, welcome back to Portugal to our renovation project where we're going to be cracking on with the plastering today. There's lots to do and lots to talk about, so let's get to it. Good morning, my love. Are you ready for some more plastering?
In my mind, yes. In my body, not so much. So the two things that this video is going to address that a lot of people ask in the questions is the mix ratio, because we've been experimenting quite a bit, so we'll go through that. And then the other big question that's more for me is how is this hemp line plaster going to work holding, covering up the conduit? Because it's one of the things with a stone building that is very difficult to solve is how you get all your electrics hidden. A lot of people surface mount. We didn't want to surface mount, so we'll find out whether it's going to work.
So what are your thoughts so far?
I think it's going to work really well. When the cable's a little bit springy, I think it's going to be a little bit more challenging. But because the conduit, the piping, the tubing, whatever you want to call it, is like 20 mil thick, we're not going to get it covered in this layer because, for example, here we've got the pipe and all of this, and the hemp plastic should only really be 20 mil thick itself. So we have an opportunity to kind of hold it in place with this, and then the second round we will kind of completely cover it. But I think it's going to work well. I think it's going to be much slower than last time because we can't just spread it where there is a pipe. You need to kind of do this where you. But when we get to the sections of wall where there's no pipe, I think it'll be fine. Yeah, I think it'll work. It's just
slowly.
Whether it dries and stays in place and all the things. But so far so good.
One of the other things that's a bit different about the way that we're doing it this time is previously in the laundry room, the small room that we did a few weeks ago, we'd already gone through with some hot mix lime, but without any hemp, and filled in a lot of the cracks and somewhat flattened the wall out. It's sometimes called dubbing out or a dubbing coat, basically just filling a lot of the bigger holes. And we had quite a lot of that to do in the other rooms because they were previously rendered in concrete and we had to chip all of that off and clean it all out. And so there were some really big gaps in some places where there was just massive holes. This room is nowhere near as bad, and so we're going to also see if we can get away without doing that kind of dubbing out process and just using the hemp to fill in some of those holes. This is the first of a few coats, so we've got the opportunity to kind of build up the layers, as Kylie was talking about. But if we can save ourselves a bit of time without having to do that whole additional process, that would be good. But for now, I'm going to put you down so I can get to work, and we'll see if we can make some progress in this room today. I wonder if these gloves are still wet from last time. Okay.
I think these are yours.
Okay. Oh. Yeah, that's a nice consistency. The stuff that we were using at the end of last time was much stickier than that. Yes. That's much more like a ball that you could...
Yes, but it was perfect for when you just want to kind of smear it on. This, because we're putting it into holes and actually making it a bit thicker. I mean, I'm not going anywhere near a ball that size.
No, sure.
I start with a handful that's like that size, much smaller. And then I often pull it apart.
Yeah, but I just pull bits off.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, this house was built back in the late 1930s, when the way that they made these is very kind of rough sawn, and they don't level up against each other. And this building on the ground floor never had ceilings, but even upstairs they put the joists in, and then they batten it out to get the height the same across all of them. And so that's what we'll have to do in here, because none of these joists are the same thickness. They're not square, plumb, anything. So we will be, to all of these joists, sistering some kind of a large batten that goes way beyond the depth of this pipework. So we don't need to worry about this one or any one that's running around the edges. And what we're probably going to do is, over where our bathroom is, there is actually a concrete block and beam. So that was put in much, much later, in the 90s, I think. And that part of the ceiling is much lower. So we're going to try to take that height and run that height around the edges of this room, and probably along the back here, and in the middle have a slightly higher ceiling. So almost like a dropped ceiling, but in reverse, where the outer side is lower and the inner side is higher, and then put some feature lighting kind of in the edges. So we don't need to worry about all the pipes that are around the edges of this room, and we ran the pipes knowing that the drop ceiling on the edges would kind of cover it all. So I imagine it's going to come down to actually even lower if I look over at the bathroom ceiling, quite low. We will also, in that ceiling, have insulation, so we can run, and not this kind of insulation, either cork or woodboard that we can shove into all of the gaps that we don't get with the plaster. So yeah, we will probably, oh, and also this wall, which is the long wall that is shared to the kitchen, on both sides we will not be plastering it, but rather pointing it. So raking out some of the clay mortar, liming in there and leaving all the stones exposed. We actually have another wall, a feature wall, somewhere else that we're doing the same thing to. Can't have that everywhere though. Well, we could, but need to hide some electric somewhere. I thought I was taller than I am.
No, you're a short ass.
Oh, okay. I need another stitch.
And based on how this is going on, if we don't like the shape of the stones that are exposed, we could probably fake it just by doing the same kind of thing and picking a line and going with it. But I'm going to try and keep the original shape as much as possible. What do you think of my nook?
Oh, it's good. We probably should have washed the wall first. The stones, they're a bit dirty and dusty, but we'll get to that.
Yeah, I like the idea. I'm not so sure about the execution, but I'm going to go and do some research and work out how we should be doing
Well,
it.
we have 2 more coats to get it looking better.
That's right, yeah.
The look when you come in the room is really nice. The detail needs a little bit of work.
Yeah, from a distance it looks great.
Yeah.
Bit like me.
No one is going to be coming up here because the TV is going to be here. So it'll just be a feature that you admire from, maybe from the wine appreciation area. Just look over here.
So, end of day 1, happy.
Yeah, so sometimes we come up with ideas or solutions that in theory, we think will work. And sometimes they don't. And sometimes they exceed our expectations, or at least my expectations.
Which is a rare occurrence.
Yeah, I'm really I'm really happy with how the hemp lime holds the conduit pipe, whatever you want to call it, in place. It does it really, really well, and there's a technique that I kind of jamming it in from both sides, and then it kind of just holds it in place, even when it's a bit springy off the wall. So this is quite loose.
Yeah.
But when we fill it from both sides, then it kind of holds it.
Because it's got all these ridges in it, it means that it really kind of grabs on when you stick the lime in there. So in some places I was putting the plaster mix behind and then like sticking the conduit onto it, which would hold it in place from bouncing off the wall. And then in some places we've been able to go over the top, but the walls are so uneven, we've not been able to cover it completely in this first coat. But that's fine, there will be another coat, it will all be hidden, and I think it's going to look really nice when we're all said and done.
We also learnt from last time to go a bit slower and not kill ourselves in a day. So we set ourselves just the task of this one wall, and this is definitely slower because we're putting it on thicker, and there's the extra work around the pipes because we haven't dubbed out the wall. This was very time consuming for Guy. So I'm glad we didn't give ourselves a bigger goal because we'd still be going at midnight. And I'm not too exhausted today, so we'll either come back tomorrow if we feel like it, or the day after.
So we did say we were going to talk about the mixing. That is exactly what we're going to do now. We'll talk about the ratio that we have kind of settled on as one that works best for us with this type of lime, this type of hemp, and the coat that we're doing. Not all limes are the same. As we have experienced, we've worked with a couple of different brands. The one that we're using today is called Baptista. It's made here in Portugal, and we like it the best. It seems to be the most reliable and give the most consistent results. So let's talk through the mix. We've got, to start with, 1 hemp, 1 quicklime, and 2 water. We're gonna put them in that order into the big barrel here. So hemp, lime, 2 water. We'll let that cook for about 15-20 minutes. And then when we come back to mix it together, we will add a little bit more water, probably another half water, mix what we've slaked so far, and then add a second hemp. So the final ratio is 2 hemp, 1 quicklime, 2 to 2.5 water. Fill one of those. And these buckets are about 15 litres each. So the water is quite cold, so it takes a bit of time for the heat to start being generated. But it's starting to go now. Steaming. So the furious bubbling has slowed down, so we can mix this in together at this stage and then add the rest of our ingredients. Okay. And we got a new machine. So I like to mix it up to this consistency first because it helps to make all of the hemp that's kind of sitting at the bottom of the barrel combine with all of the lime. Otherwise you can end up in a situation where you've got a bunch of material at the bottom which isn't mixed in. So I like to get it to this consistency first, which is kind of like a runny porridge almost, but we've got our second bucket of hemp to go in and that will stiffen it up much more. And then we can either put in the rest of the water or just leave it as it is based on how it comes together. So this is almost a bit too wet at the moment, but as it continues to steam, it will evaporate some more of the moisture, and in about an hour's time, when we're probably ready to use it, it will be a little bit firmer and not quite as hot, because at the moment, like this is almost, yeah, this is uncomfortable to touch. You can apply it hot, but not with your hands, because that would be quite painful. But that is pretty much ready to go. This is the second mix that we've done today. We're doing 2 at the beginning of the day, and then we'll use all of that up. Then we'll take a break for lunch, and we'll do another 2 mixes back to back for the afternoon session, and we'll see how we go. But we're going to let this cool down before we use it.
I would also say that there's a slightly different consistency depending on what you're doing. So when we did the first room and we had no electrics, we were trying to get it quite wet, and you can kind of use your hand to move it around really easily, so the wetter mix is really good. As it stiffens up a bit, it's much more difficult to move kind of in this kind of motion, but then you can kind of ball it up and use your fingertips, and that's actually really good around the pipe work. So again, you kind of got to learn what mix is best for what application. And also when we're doing the room we're doing now, there's a lot of holes, and so we're jamming stuff in, and a slightly firmer mix is better for that than the wet stuff. You can't really get it in and it's all sloppy in your hand.
Okay, now we've got some material. We're going to start sticking it on the walls, and I think we will cue the time lapse. Come on in. So, we are done with this room for
Almost.
now. Are you pleased?
Yeah, particularly around the window, although we haven't finished because we had to rebuild some of the wall there. It definitely has made the room lighter and brighter, and this long wall we still have to point, which will probably start sometime after Christmas. We had some delays, so this video is actually shot over 2.5 weeks. We ran out of lime, and it turns out that most of the stores only sell the lime, the quicklime, in the summer months because that's when the farmers use it in the fields. But then we did manage to find some other lime to finish the last little bit, which was good. And they have a bit more, so we can continue with the plastering in the kitchen. We also had some discussions around temperature, because you shouldn't be using quicklime if your temperature is going to go below 5. And we've done some temperature readings down here, and it's constantly at 12-13 degrees Celsius, which is way above 5 degrees, which is the minimum. So we will be fine to continue plastering at least until Christmas, when we have our little mini goal of getting all of down here scratch coated. So that's good, I guess, although we are exhausted. But I did want to answer one. So a couple of people asked about this beautiful plumbing that we have here.
And maybe also this plumbing here that is not connected to anything.
and perhaps this bit of plumbing also.
Oh, I can barely see that.
Okay, so let's start with this. This is a soil pipe from the existing toilet. Now, grey is my favourite colour, but even with some fairy lights, I don't think that we could design this in to make it look very attractive. It will be going. The new toilet soil pipe is going to be in this corner. It will come down the wall and then attach into the bottom where this existing soil pipe is. This is the grey water, so it will have a sink connection there, and then probably through this old soil pipe hole is where the shower and the bath will have connections, so that we don't have to clear this beam, because otherwise the ceiling would have to be very, very low. So we have 2 holes here in the existing floor upstairs that we will try to reuse, so we have to drill more holes in this concrete slab, and that will come over and again come down into this grey water thing, which obviously has not been cemented in place yet, fixed in place, because we don't know where we're going. And then this whole section from there to like here will be boxed in. And when I say boxed in, we're going to build this is my idea for what we're going to build, which is it will only need to be 300, 400 mil deep. And so it can be boxed in where the pipes actually are, and then in all the other sections there will be like open shelves or little cupboards, so that it won't look like surfaces that are boxed in. It will look like a featured...
And it becomes usable space.
Exactly, because it's a big section of wall to lose. And our whole design for all of these services was completely done knowing that we would have to box this in and being able to reutilize it. Did originally also want to put the underfloor heating manifold here, but we've subsequently changed our mind. This equally will be going, this is the old water feed, but it is our only source of water. So it connects outside to our outdoor tap, which then connects up to our tent, and it connects up to the old kitchen. And so we don't want to take that out just yet because it's our only source of water. So once we've plumbed in the new water, then we can take this out, and then we'll make good all the sections here that need it. When this was cemented into this part of the wall, which is why we had to rebuild this, and half of the wall fell down and there was loads of damage outside, so we've had to clean up the window a little bit, but that's all done now. So once this is out in the future, obviously it will be a nice pretty window. Oh, the other thing, just because this is a plastering video, the whole thing at the beginning of the video was, does this hemp plaster do really well at hiding these conduit pipes? And I would say yes, because if you were using traditional plaster, you could only have a really thin, like 5 to 8 mil thick layer, and so you'd have to do many. And in some sections, like we haven't even got to, like here, this has probably still got 20 mil to go to cover that over. So we will have to still do, even with this, another 1 to 2 coats, maybe one thick one and then one thin one. But if you were using traditional plaster, you wouldn't be able to do this, and you would have to channel out everything. And we may in the future do some channeling out so we don't have to have the hemp plaster as thick, but I think it's faster to do hemp plastering than it is to do all the channeling out.
Yeah, particularly with these stones.
Yeah.
One of the other things that we set out to investigate as part of doing the plastering in this room was whether or not we need to do like a whole dubbing out phase first and then hemp plaster over the top, or as we did in this room, could we just put the hemp plaster straight onto the walls and use that to fill all the holes? So it does work to just put the hemp plaster in and to kind of build it out as needed. But in some cases, the holes were so deep that we found that we would need multiple layers of hemp in there. So what we did in a couple of places was actually use a bit of regular hot mix lime and sand just to fill those holes with some stones as well. So we could bring it out to be a little bit flatter, and then we'll be able to hemp plaster over the top. Most of the walls in this room were pretty flat anyway and didn't have too many big holes, so it wasn't a big deal. But I think when we come on to do the next room, which will be the kitchen diner, we'll maybe first go around and look to see where some of those big holes are, fill those in advance, and then hemp plaster over the top. But we won't go and fill all of the cracks first like we did in the first room, because that's very tedious, time consuming, and uses more material than we maybe need to use. So, very pleased that this room is done. I think it was 3.5 days. Am I right about that?
1, 2, yeah.
So the good news is we are on track currently for our Christmas celebration deadline of getting the entire ground floor first fixed and scratch coat on. Of course, walls like this are not having anything because they're going to be pointed later. So the next thing that we'll be moving on to is the kitchen and dining room. We've got Mark the electrician coming back to help us out with that. So do look out for another video with all of that stuff going on. But that is it for this one. We will see you in the next one. Bye for now.
Bye!